Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome back here for another episode of the Tradie Business School podcast, where we have real conversations to help you grow and scale your business and solve everyday problems that come up for trade business owners. I am joined today with the lovely Louise Ledbrook, who has been organising me since what seems like at 1955. And the reason I've got her on today's episode with me is because I want to talk about feathers, bricks, and trucks. And this come up not so long ago for Lou as a very live example. Now, Lou's role is usually to help me sort my stuff out, but I got one rare opportunity to remind Lou of feathers, bricks, and trucks. And we will get into that. But first and foremost, Lou, welcome to the podcast. How are you? What's been going on for you?
Hey, Adam. Thanks for having me. What's been going on? So much. We've been doing a lot. Obviously, a lot of stuff with the game changers, which is game changing. And can't wait to see what happens next year. Some really exciting stuff coming up for the guys next year. So, yeah, just getting ready for Christmas.
Yeah. So we're recording this before Christmas. It'll go live after Christmas and with real intent, right? Because we want to talk to people about how fatigue creeps in, right? And the symptoms of fatigue. So everybody hopefully is now back from Christmas full of life. You know, they've had an amazing break. They've gone through the adrenal crash. They've got sick. They've slept. They've eaten too much. They've drank too much. But what I want to do is, really prepare people for the year ahead. And I know Brian and Miranda have got together and they've talked about planning and setting yourself up for success. We've done a lot of this ourselves within the business. But I really want to talk to people about the little nuances. And this come up for you a short time ago because you were running around like a headless chook. You had a lot of things that were planned and a lot of things that were unplanned. And, what we do is we find ourselves quite often outside of our window of tolerance or, just our best selves, And what happens is as we get further and further away from that window of tolerance and our best selves, the symptoms increase in intensity. So what I wanted to talk to everyone initially is about the feathers, and these are the little tickles that we get, the little things that people really, and particularly business owners and entrepreneurs, they really don't pay any attention to this stuff. But this is, and quite often, when we get hit by the truck, we're like, oh, how did I get here? So, I mean, for you, you've really had a monster back half of, 2022, 2023 showing no sign of slowing up for you. So, like self-care is a big part of your life and what you do. We had a discussion because things start sliding and we all do it. Every business owner can certainly relate to that. But tell me, give us a rundown of the hectic part of 2022 that was for you. And I guess those symptoms that started showing up, some of the ones that you didn't pay attention to, and obviously we'll get into the ones that you did.
Well, the problem is they show up and you don't have any choice but to pay attention, right? And I think that's the thing that you're saying. You want to make sure that you notice the feathers because they really are feathers. Like, if you think about how delicate a feather is when it kind of gives you a little tickle.
Yeah.
Sometimes you might hardly even notice it. But
people that have just tuned in are like, am I on the right podcast here? Feathers. Where's this?
I promise you, it's all
it's legit. But yeah, it's those little tickles. Please.
Yeah. And so, and they can be, you start to have bad night's sleep. They could be, you start to forget things. They can be like small things. You forget a name, you forget an appointment, you're having a bad night's sleep. You start to get a little bit short-tempered. Like there can be all sorts of different things like that. And you're so busy or you're so caught up in life and the emotion, and because sometimes the things that take you off track or start hitting you are experiences in your life. Like we had deaths in the family and huge operations and medical procedures and all that sort of stuff. That started coming at me. And so you have this emotional
big
weight.
Business projects.
Big business projects all happening at the same time. And so that's all coming at you. And so you just keep going, and you ignore the little feathers and you're like, oh, I'm not sleeping or I'm just not doing this. And then, you start to either have caffeine to keep going through the day, or some people start taking sleeping tablets to try and sleep at night. And that's actually just covering up the feathers, This is not fluffing up the doona. This is like just covering it up. And so you're ignoring those feathers.
I think the thing there, right, and what I want to point out to everyone that's really powerful is we normalize this stuff.
Yeah.
Like when we had the conversation about feathers, and I was throwing examples out there, stumping your toe, hitting your thumb with a hammer, tradesmen can all, attest to this sort of stuff. You're walking around with your phone in your hand and you're like, where's my phone? My sunglasses are
yeah.
They're and it's so entry level. When you take a step back, these are the entry level symptoms to fatigue, to exhaustion, to the fact that you are not 100%. And this is the thing, you might have just slipped into 98, 96, 95, 90%, but this is where this stuff starts showing up. Yeah. And it really is the precipice for you to identify that, I'm just pushing the envelope here. But we know business owners have unrelenting standards, demanding critics that are telling us that we need to go harder and we've got plenty in the tank. And this is the thing, right? But what it leads to is the law of diminishing returns over time. So yeah, those little tiny things, we let go, we let slip, For me, it would be, it's always clumsy stuff for me, stumping my toe and, walking into things, and because it is fairly normal, like people do it all the time, that we're surrounded by it, right? But here's the thing, when you are your best self, when you are 100% on, that stuff doesn't happen.
Yeah.
But because it happens so much around us, because there is this pandemic of exhaustion, we're so surrounded by it, it's so easy to normalize it. So,
yeah.
So we talked about that and you were like, oh yeah, there's a ton of stuff that you've missed. And I do the same. Like, I'm not trying to have this podcast and say to people, I'm, as soon as I stub my toe, I put myself in a ice bath and a meditation suite for 4 hours. No, because this is the thing. But I think what I've become inherently more aware over the time and through my journey of burnout and fatigue is actually acknowledging these things and going, oh, okay, I did that thing. Yeah. So they're the feathers.
Yeah.
Now, it does escalate. And this is where some people still normalize is the brick. I often talk about the brick. And now sometimes it's literally you drop a brick on your toe.
Yeah.
Something, you bump something and you get hit by a brick in the head.
It's like the next level of pain,
Yeah. It's, and we talk about the universe speaks to us in mysterious ways, right? I'm a Transformers geek. Like I love Bumblebee. And the fact that he talks through his radio and uses song lyrics to communicate with people, that's kind of how I think the universe works. It has this, it doesn't have a voice per se, but it talks to us in ways that if we actually paid attention, we start to understand the messaging,
Yeah.
So, I mean, talk to me about the bricks that have smashed you along the way. Because, and look, it doesn't have to be those last 6 months. I know there's crashes and burns.
Similar bricks, right? Seem to come back up. And then there's obviously the truck, and we can talk about the truck because I've also hit the truck as well. Or it hit me, whatever it was.
Yeah.
Not this year, thankfully. Yeah, and so often then it's more in your face, the brick, right? So it's like you get really sick, like you get the flu, like full on, you're in bed, you got the aches and pains. Flu is a big one, right? A lot of people will get hit with the flu brick, and I did. So I had a full-on flu and was really, really not well, but powered through. Like I had so much that I had to do and I was going away and had all this other stuff. So I was powering through and just like took all of the Codrils to just, make sure that I could. And then got home from a weekend away, being really sick that whole weekend. Again, all right, full day of work. Let's just get into it. And I fell down my stairs and thought I broke my foot. Like the pain was that bad, but I think also my pain threshold had lowered because I was already in such a state. Pain was so bad that I actually passed out. Like I was in that much pain. Like, and so it was just like, that's not even a truck I've been in. Like, but that was still pretty bad, right? So I'm lying.
Yeah, I've normalized this truck back to being a brick. It's not really a truck. I fell down a flight of stairs. I passed out at the bottom, but I'm still not qualifying that as getting hit by a truck. I can't wait to see what getting hit by a truck is like for you.
Well, I mean, it kind of was a truck in a way. Like it was a truck. But when I say I've been hit with truck, like I had full on chronic fatigue, bedridden chronic level of chronic fatigue, like full on burnout. But this was like, all right, you now have to go. So I crawled up the stairs and laid in bed for the rest of the day, basically after that.
And I think that's the thing, right? The feedback when you're not paying attention to the feathers, the feedback has to intensify from the universe that you're not taking care of yourself. And that's the thing. Like, and we talk about this all the time in coaching. If you don't make the decision, you're abdicating your responsibility to the universe. And often the decision will be made for you. And this is why I bang on about this so much now, is because it becomes so important for you to take time out and take that self-care. And I think on the back of, the long break that a lot of people have had now, it's about forward planning the breaks and the self-care that you do take and just making sure that you get the care that you need. So
it should be part of your daily routine. And I think that's one of the things that's really important is as the feathers start to come, it's normally because we've dropped the consistent self-care. That's why the feathers start to come. And I've done that, and your idea of self-care is different from someone else's. Like what works for you is different from others. Some people, it's going for a run. Some people, it's going for a walk. It could be meditating. It could be just having alone time, going fishing. It could be anything, and it's incorporating that into your life. And when that drops, that also means the feathers will start. And so when you feel the feathers, it's going, what have I dropped or what have I not incorporated into my life? And catching them before the brick comes, and not just going, it's okay, I'll power through, because the brick will always come.
Yeah, particularly if you're not paying attention. And I think one thing you touched on really early that's really important is it's not just paying attention to the tickle, the feather. It's paying attention to how you're introducing coping mechanisms for those things, e.g., upping the amount of caffeine you're taking, starting to take painkillers to get through the day, relying on other drugs, increased alcohol because you're soothing at night to try and decompress so you can sleep and you're passing out. These are all things that are so quintessential, symptom blockers. So like pay attention to those. But moving on to the truck, what does that look like? I mean, you touched on it a little bit before, chronic fatigue, being in bed.
Yeah. And so I think, a lot of us entrepreneurs and business owners are type A, high-performing personalities. It is difficult for us to stop, and we're born this way. And so I've always kind of been this way. And so as a teenager, I got hit with chronic fatigue. So I got hit early with chronic fatigue, fully bedridden, couldn't even get up to switch the light switch off, like full on, flat out. And then would go through cycles until I learned what it was and what would trigger it. And then it was about look for the feathers, look for the bricks. Like, what were my feathers? And everyone's feathers are slightly different. So what are my signs that I am going towards that? And really, and not just saying to myself, it's okay, like I'll get through it if I just push a bit longer, because the universe or the body doesn't have the same timeframes that we have, right? So we can say, I've just got to do one more week. I've just got to do one more month. You don't know that your body is actually going to last that week or that month. You don't know that. You might think that that'd be great, but you don't know that. And it could be tomorrow that you fall downstairs, or it could be.
Yeah, 100%. Like this is the thing. You've really got to tune into where you're at, because the universe has a funny way of teaching you the lessons that you need to learn. So, I mean, like for me, my trucks were exactly the same as you, like burnout, chronic fatigue, in bed, basically, I felt paralyzed. It got to that point where I literally couldn't get up. But also, in my 30s, 30 years old, being admitted to hospital with what they thought was a stroke from the stress because I just, compressed everything. I'm like, no, it's normal. I'll just be fine. I was drinking 12 cups of coffee a day and, relying on medication to keep me going and deal with depression, but also keep me moving forward, all of these sorts of things. And when you're constantly going, there's something wrong with me, there's something wrong with me, it's probably because there is. Like, nobody knows you better than yourself. And for some people, like getting hit by a truck is quite literal. I ran a red light because I didn't see it. I was so completely oblivious to what was going on around. Or I fell asleep and got cleaned up, And if you were lucky enough to survive a truck hitting you, geez, please pay attention to what's going on there. Like, and sometimes, it's out of your control. Well, more often than not, it is. But I really want to empower people this year to start paying attention to those symptoms and the coping mechanisms that come with those symptoms to try and avoid the truck, the inevitable truck. So,
yeah.
Any last thoughts for you, Lou?
Well, like you said, we're obviously recording this before Christmas, and a lot of people are in that state of they've just been running a marathon to get to the end of the year.
Yeah.
I think this is a really important episode to listen to at the start of the year because you don't want to just keep going. You don't want to just keep running through the end of the year straight into the next and ignore where you were at the end of the year.
And this was a massive cycle for me. Every single year I would crash and burn at the end of the year. And, we talked to our clients about this in one of our coaching sessions just the other day, talking to them about that crash, the adrenal and cortisol crash at the end of the year, where I would pass out for a couple of days. And then because all my cortisol levels had dropped, my immune system would let all the bugs in. I'd then get sick. So I'd spend my whole holiday Christmas break basically in bed, exhausted, recovering. And I get to that point where I'd be like, oh, I'm okay now, because I'd literally felt like I'd been hit by a truck, although I hadn't. And then I'd go through the next year, I'd repeat that cycle because I'd never learned. So this is one of the reasons that we wanted to do this so early on in the year is be aware of these symptoms, be aware of the feathers, be aware of the bricks. And by God, please pay attention if you are unlucky enough to get hit by a truck because, we don't want this stuff to keep happening. We really want people to take the time out. So if you have liked this episode of Tradie Business School podcast, please make sure that you actually like it, subscribe, click the notifications item, and don't forget to share with somebody who might need to hear this. In addition, please do not hesitate to log on to tradiebusinessschool.com and, book an appointment. If you need some help identifying the feathers, the bricks, and the trucks, please reach out to our team there. Once again, thank you, Lou, for being part of the show today. It's been great having you on board. Really appreciate you taking time to share your feathers, bricks, and trucks. And I really hope there's no more in the future for you.
Thank you. Likewise, Adam. Thanks for having me on.
Take care. See ya.